Hey everyone, welcome back to our Geography Facts channel. Today we're diving into an important topic. We are exploring the why people choose to remain Canadians rather than becoming Americans. Feel free to comment if you know more reasons why people choose to stay Canadian rather than become American. If you are too very ambitious in life, then you should immigrate to the United States. We'll reveal the reasons in our next video, so be sure to subscribe and stay tuned. According to the immigration websites, over 1 million Americans living in Canada today. Canada's peaceful, liberal culture, coupled with the country's close physical proximity to the U.S., makes it an appealing home for U.S. citizens. Some Americans have stated that Canada should join the U.S., but some people don't believe they are serious, but are just trying to be nice by implying they would welcome Canadian citizens. We do not want to do comparisons that imply that Canadians are somehow better or Americans. Let's explore why people choose to remain Canadians rather than becoming Americans. Number 10. Culture. Migrated Western Europeans and people from Commonwealth countries will quite often prefer Canada, simply because Canada provides much less culture shock to them. Canada places more emphasis on quality of life than the U.S. does. For instance, Canadians get more paid holiday and vacation time, as well as mandatory paid maternity leaves for workers. Culturally, Canada is much more liberal than the U.S. Canada was one of the first countries to legalize same-sex marriage, and Canadians are cool with nudity and swearing on TV. In Canada, teenagers can drink alcohol. In provinces like Alberta, Quebec, and Manitoba, underage drinking is allowed for 17-year-old teens. As long as it is done under the supervision of parents in their residence, you will be able to legally possess and use cannabis in Canada. Like in Western Europe, religion does not play a major role in Canadian society, and it stays out of politics. Number 9. Gun culture. Lack of Canadian gun culture. If you live outside or inside Canada's largest city, and you feel completely safe walking alone anywhere, anytime. You don't bother locking the doors at night, never been robbed or mugged. And outside of hunting rifles or on a police officer, you never seen a gun, nor heard one fired, nor know anyone that owns one. Number 8. Slavery in Canada. There was minimal slavery in Canada. Slavery has always been considered to be wrong in Canada. Therefore, the development of Canada did not take place against a backdrop where some were considered drastically less equal than others, to the point where human rights were grievously violated, and it was legitimized by large swaths of country. This is not to say Canada prejudice-free. Canada have recently come to understand they need to work on that. But the bulk of Canadians believe that discrimination is wrong. Number 7. Canadian wilderness. Because the Canadian wilderness was a hostile environment for early settlers, it was necessary for us to learn to help each other if we were to successfully develop the country at all. For the most part, that attitude still prevails. So we tend to be friendly and helpful rather than competing with each other. Number 6. Life expectancy. Canada has a longer life expectancy than the U.S. Canadians and immigrants to Canada will never go bankrupt or even receive a bill because of a medical emergency. Canada is a very wealthy country, and it plays out in the overall standard of living. When people are well-fed, well-clothed, and have comfortable places to live and sufficient funds to pursue interests and enjoy their private time, there is not an urgency to compete tooth and nail to secure a happy life. Canadians are less inclined to assess people by the material objects they have accumulated, and more inclined to give credit to those who have carved out a happy and productive life. Number 5. Education system. Canada has always valued education, and there has always been relatively easy access to higher education. Consequently, Canada is one of the most well-educated countries in the world. Well over 50% of Canadian population has completed college-level degrees. Number 4. Discriminate on the basis of class or income. Even those from humble backgrounds could pursue an education. There are not so many of the difficulties that come from class-centered divisions. There is far more class fluidity in Canada. It is also considered extremely bad form to discriminate on the basis of class or income. It's a very different way of approaching life. Competition in its destructive forms is not as rife here. Instead, we believe in maintaining high standards just because that's what good people do. It goes without saying that there are exceptions. I am merely describing the general bent of mind in Canada. Number 3. Parliamentary system. Canada's inheritance of the British parliamentary system means the leader of the country is the Prime Minister, who can be dropped from the party in power and replaced by the whim of the party members. Number 2. Urban development. Canadian cities are much newer and cleaner, and none have the kind of slums that are seen in some U.S. cities. Racial tensions are not nearly as prevalent in Canada. Canada was where U.S. slaves escaped to by the thousands when fleeing their U.S. masters. Canada also has a very high reputation around the world politically, and Canadian citizens enjoy hassle-free travel to virtually all nations of the world, unlike their American counterparts. Canada is actively seeking skilled immigrants and is so culturally similar to the U.S., it's a very easy place for Americans to move to and quickly feel at home. Number 1. Canadians never tried to escape British rule. Canadians never tried to escape British rule. The British settled in Canada. The French were already settled in Canada. So there was much back and forth about who would be the dominant culture early in Canadian history. The British won that war, but as time passed, it has been understood that the French needed to preserve their culture, heritage, and way of life, so there have been renegotiations on an ongoing basis. So Canadians have always been multicultural and always believed diversity enriches and strengthens our culture. U.S. citizens moved north under a variety of circumstances. Some U.S. citizens living in Canada were born in the U.S. and moved to Canada with their parents as babies, young children, or teenagers. Others come to Canada to attend college or university and stay north of the border to begin their professional lives. Still, other U.S. citizens come to Canada as adults, either to relocate for work because they are marrying a Canadian or simply because they would like to retire in Canada. Feel free to comment if you know more reasons why people choose to stay Canadian rather than become American. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on our latest content. Until next time, happy exploring.